On January 24, 2009, in the Spanish city of Seville, a 17-year-old girl named Marta del Castillo left to meet her boyfriend, Miguel Carcanio, as they needed to discuss some aspects of their relationship. After saying goodbye to her family, Marta left her house, never to be seen alive again. After 21 days of search, on February 13, 2009, the police finally located the alleged suspect. The young man assumed all responsibility for the case and revealed that he had gotten rid of Martha and, moreover, all the evidence regarding the case. No one imagined that this would be one of the longest, most erratic, and contradictory cases ever seen in the history of the European country, the case of Marta del Castillo. Every day we coexist with evil. We witness the darkest side of human behavior. The suffering caused by one individual to others is something inherent in our society. As dedicated investigators of the criminal world, we're on a mission to uncover the most shocking crimes and get inside the minds of those who commit them. I am Lucas, and today I bring you another unreal true crime. The case of Marta del Castillo. Marta del Castillo was born on June 19, 1991, in Seville, Spain, to Eva Casanueva and Antonio del Castillo. She was a 17-year-old adolescent, attending high school, until one day her life took a horrific turn. On January 24, 2009, Martha was chatting with Sylvia Fernandez, her best friend, when suddenly Martha ended the conversation. She told her friend that she had to leave and that she was in a hurry because her boyfriend Miguel Carcanio was waiting downstairs. She needed to talk to him to clarify some things about their relationship and assured that she would tell everything when she returned. In the hallway, Martha ran into her father, who advised her not to get on Miguel's motorcycle. The only response he received from his daughter was a kiss on the cheek. At 5:30 p.m., Martha left her home, and as the hours passed, and she didn't return, her family began to worry. Her mother decided to call all acquaintances who might have information about her daughter's whereabouts, including Carcanio. The unanimous response was that Martha must be with Miguel. He must know where she was. However, after the young man did not answer the calls, Martha's father decided to approach the boy's house, repeatedly rang the bell, but no one opened the door. Eventually, they could contact someone who had seen her that night, Samuel Benitez, a close friend of Miguel. At that moment, Martha's mother perceived the first strange situation. The young man told her that Miguel had left Martha at his house at midnight, which was impossible, as it was only 11:45. At 2 in the morning, Martha's family finally reported her disappearance, but they never suspected that it would become one of the most publicized cases in the country's history. 4 hours later, the details of who was already a suspect, Martha's boyfriend Miguel Carcanio, were provided. At 1:30 p.m., a third report was filed. The police did not take action, and the family became increasingly impatient. Only 17 hours after the first request for help, as established by the protocol, the officers began searching for Martha. In the days following the disappearance, the family decided to take statements from relatives and friends of the young girl. On January 27, 2009, the first press conference was held, while the parents started a campaign to find the young girl. The following day, 2,000 people protested in Seville, calling for the young girl's return, under the slogan, "We are all Martha." On February 7, another demonstration was convened, gathering about 3,000 people. The case echoed on television and in newspapers. After 21 days of searching, on February 13, the police finally located Miguel Carcanio. The 20-year-old assumed all responsibility for the case, stating he had murdered Martha and dumped her body into the Guadalquivir River, very close to his apartment. He also shared a crucial piece of information. He didn't commit the atrocious acts alone. He identified Samuel Benitez as one of his accomplices, claiming he helped dispose of the body. Benitez accepted the blame. Later, Miguel identified Javier Garcia Marin, a problematic miner known as El Cuco, and Francisco Delgado, Carcaño's brother, and his girlfriend, Maria Garcia, as accomplices. All five were arrested. The interrogations led to a wave of contradictions, and simultaneously, the meticulous search for Martha's body in the river commenced. On February 16, Carcaño reiterated his statement in front of a judge. Unlike his friend Samuel, who wanted nothing to do with the case, he assured he had not been involved in Martha's murder and only confessed due to police harassment. On March 18, Miguel Carcaño requested to make another statement and changed his version of events, claiming both he and El Cuco abused Martha at knife point, after which the miner strangled her. They then took her body to Delgado's house and later threw it into a garbage container. Following these declarations, the judge ordered the suspension of the search in the Guadalquivir River and directed the search to a landfill. Martha's father even accused Delgado's girlfriend, as her father worked at a biological waste crematorium. He speculated that the body might have been incinerated. This theory gained media traction, but the police continued their search. On November 16, 2009, El Cuco exceeded the maximum term for preventive detention and was transferred to a supervised flat awaiting trial. In February 2011, he was tried again, this time for abuse and murder. However, due to insufficient evidence, he was acquitted of these charges but was sentenced to 2 years and 11 months in a juvenile detention center for covering up for Carcaño. On October 17, 2011, the trial finally commenced against the 4 adult defendants involved in the case. Miguel Carcaño provided more details about Martha's murder, stating he had hit her with an ashtray during a heated argument, causing her death. He revealed his previous statements about abusing her were lies. His brother, his brother's girlfriend, and Benitez claimed innocence and professed ignorance about the location of Martha's body, asserting Carcaño fabricated stories to lessen his guilt. By November 22, 2011, the forensic police confirmed that they had found traces of Martha's blood on Miguel's jacket and a mix of his and Maria Garcia's genetic profiles on a roll of fabric tape. DNA from Francisco Delgado and the aforementioned woman was also found on an extension cable, believed to have been used to strangle Martha. This was unusual as the accused kept insisting that she had only been at the crime scene in the early morning and was unaware of the entire incident. After uncovering the lie, Maria Garcia was accused of desecrating the body and cover-up. The police also detected up to 5 fingerprints on 3 alcohol bottles, one belonging to El Cuco. The only one against whom there was no evidence was Benitez. By this point, the 5 youths were already under the scrutiny of the entire population. The initial trials were held with substantial police presence, and the prosecution assigned prison years for Carcaño, Benitez, Delgado, and Garcia, involving a total of 90 witnesses, including national police officers and experts. The assistance of 30,000 phone monitorings, crime scene photographs, DNA found by the forensic police, and items found at the house located at Leon 13 were considered. The trials had created such a public uproar that people pressed against the police cordon to receive the accused, loudly demanding the appearance of Martha's body. Delgado and his girlfriend appeared covered with balaclavas and sunglasses, but they still couldn't escape the crowd. A lady approached them and started insulting them. Other people tried to remove their glasses while pushing them so that everyone could see their faces. During the trial, El Cuco's mother was interviewed, her face covered. She asserted her son's innocence and claimed neither she nor he knew anything about Martha's body. She was labeled a liar by journalists but didn't care. She still received a sum of 10,000 euros for being interviewed. A few days later, Martha's family asked that her earnings from the program be regulated, and that the money be used to face her son's sentence. During the proceedings, a key witness appeared: the taxi driver who transported Delgado on the night of the crime. He stated that he was very attentive to the passengers he picked up, as a colleague had been murdered while working recently. He remembered picking up a bald man with a beard, matching Delgado's description, who had a plastic bag, and looked at him very intently. He took him to Leon 13th Street, precisely where the crime had occurred, and the charge was €8. However, Delgado's defense lawyer questioned this evidence, claiming the fare for the 2 kilometers covered in those years should have been €5, not 8, thus discrediting the statement. When Martha's parents took the stand, they mentioned the profound pain the situation was causing. They had to quit their jobs, start psychiatric medications, and even develop depression. Their other 2 daughters, Martha's sisters, were also going through a horrible time. They just wanted everything to end. To add to the pain, the jury's verdict in January 2012 didn't satisfy the family. Carcanio ended up as the sole responsible party for the young girl's murder and was sentenced to 21 years and 3 months in prison. Additionally, for the next 30 years, he is banned from residing in the city where the victim's parents and sisters live. At the same time, Carcanio should pay part of the trial costs and compensate the victim's parents with €280,000 and each of her sisters with €30,000 for the moral damage caused by Martha's murder and disappearance. Meanwhile, Delgado, Maria Garcia, and Samuel Benitez were released as there was no evidence placing them at the crime scene at the time of the murder. The following year, Delgado and Benitez demanded Martha's family pay for the trial costs. Martha's father stated he would seek justice beyond national borders as he believed the system in Spain was obsolete. He even claimed he would go to Strasbourg, home to the European Parliament, and the European Court of Human Rights. In December 2011, Martha's mother wrote a letter to Carcanio and sent it to prison, asking him to end the torture of uncertainty she felt due to the absence of her daughter's body. She wanted Martha to rest in peace in a place where she could bring her flowers and talk to her. However, the letter never received a response. On January 24, 2012, 3 years after Martha's disappearance, demonstrations occurred in various cities and towns in Spain, demanding justice for the young girl. In prison, Carcanio was threatened by other inmates and later attempted suicide. He was admitted to a therapeutic module and did not receive visitors or talk to anyone on the phone. The young murderer was very busy during his imprisonment, creating up to 7 different versions of the crime, leading to several lawyers resigning from defending him. The latest version, in 2013, implicated someone close to him as the perpetrator of the crime. Carcanio spoke of an argument between him and his brother over the mortgage for the house at Leon 13. He sent a letter to the family expressing his wish to stop covering for Delgado. According to this version, a fight ensued over a fraudulent loan. The conversation escalated to the point that Delgado threatened his brother with a weapon. When Martha tried to intervene, she allegedly received a fatal blow with the butt of Delgado's gun. Delgado then made a call, and Miguel claims he doesn't know who it was directed to or what was discussed, but he remembers that he then ran out of the house, leaving Martha lifeless in the room. It was then that El Cuco arrived, and Miguel asked for his help to dispose of the body using a wheelchair. They transported the body to the Majaloba farm in La Rinconada and buried it there. Martha's parents believed Carcanio's version and held him in high esteem despite everything that had happened. They requested the reopening of the investigation, focusing on Miguel's brother this time. However, neither the prosecution nor the judge gave weight to the statements. Martha's father decided to visit Carcanio in prison himself, asking him to collaborate. He even told him he had bought the house at Leon 13 and that it would be his after serving his sentence if he helped find his daughter's body. The search for Martha's body was one of the most expensive in the country's history, encompassing both land and sea to locate the young girl. The first search was conducted in the Guadalquivir River. However, Several inconsistencies were found when agents tried to recreate the transfer from Leon 13's floor. It was impossible for three people, in this case El Cuco, Carcanio, and Benitez, to transport together on a motorcycle, especially carrying Martha's body. In the reenactment, the body fell to the ground the moment the engine started, when Carcanio claimed that the body had been thrown in a trash bin. The search began in the landfill that receives all the waste from Seville. Due to the time elapse since the young girl's disappearance and the vast amount of waste received by the landfill, the search team estimated they would have to remove around 40,000 tons of garbage to obtain some result. They searched for a total of 32 days without success. The accused mentioned up to 4 different locations where the body was, prompting new searches each time. On one occasion, the then Interior Minister, Alfredo Perez, had to pause the search as the Ministry of Economy and Finance was running out of funds. In April 2013, after pointing to his brother as Martha's real murderer, Carcanio gave a new location for the body near the municipality of La Rinconada. Despite losing almost all credibility after so many false versions, a new search was decided upon. Carcanio accompanied the police officers to where he claimed to have buried Martha's body along with Delgado on that night in 2009. He did not give precise directions. He only sketched the area where he believed they had dumped the body. The soil of 6 farms was excavated, focusing on points where, according to a study done with a georadar, there had been earth movements in recent years. In total, an area of 10,000 square meters was scanned. But again, nothing was found. All the searches were in vain. At the request of the parents, the search for the body was halted until 2015. The public ministry asked the defendants to jointly compensate the Ministry of the Interior with a sum of €616,319, the approximate cost of the search, but this never happened. Fortunately, other doubts in the case were resolved, thanks to a very special collaborator. In February 2009, Oscar presented himself to Rosalia, Cuco's mother, as a criminal, but in reality, he was an infiltrator seeking a confession, simple words that could shed some light on Martha's whereabouts. Over time, they began to meet frequently, seeing each other every 2 or 3 days, and talk daily on the phone. Rosalia trusted him with the keys to her house. They shared confidences, took long walks on the beach. He gained her trust and won her over. He even made her believe that they would leave together for some country in Eastern Europe once everything ended for her son. For 2.5 years, Oscar recorded 600 hours of conversation between Rosalia and her surroundings. In October 2011, El Cuco was already granted release permits from the juvenile center to which he had been sent for covering up for Carcanio. During a conversation, Oscar asked the young man if he thought the police were following him, to which El Cuco responded affirmatively, asserting they would do so to find out where they got rid of Martha. This statement forever incriminated him. After finishing talking, El Cuco immediately realized what he had said and quickly rectified, asserting he hadn't done anything, while Oscar played along as if he hadn't noticed. In other tapes, El Cuco mocked the police's efforts to find the body, and Rosalia discussed how inept the investigators had been for not auditing the calls from her mobile phone. Despite the hard work of the man, those 600 hours of recordings were never judicialized. Only in 2022, 13 years after Martha's disappearance, did the infiltrators' work yield results. On May 26, 2022, dozens of people, especially neighbors of Martha's family, gathered at the courthouse doors wanting to accompany them to the celebration of the new judicial process. Rosalia and El Cuco arrived at the courthouse shielded by the police. The young man was entirely covered, wearing a large hoodie, a balaclava, sunglasses, and even gloves. Rosalia was wearing sunglasses, a mask, and a headscarf. In 2011, El Cuco declared that he had not been in the flat on Leon 13th Street, where the crime occurred, but with several friends. He said he had gone home at 11:30 at night and had met his mother's partner, who had gone out to throw out the garbage. then had gone up to his house and had not left for the rest of the night. Rosalia, for her part, said she had gone out with her partner for drinks around 11:30 at night and had returned home around 1:30 in the morning on January 25, finding her son asleep there. El Cuco confessed that on the night of January 24, Carcanio called him after having murdered Martha and asked him for help to bury her body. Along with Benitez, they took his mother's car and went to Leon 13, where Delgado was also found. Meanwhile, Rosalia was at the bar and stayed there until 4:30 in the morning. When she got home, her son was still missing. Both El Cuco and his mother were charged with perjury, the act aggravated by having obstructed the judicial procedure ongoing since 2009. Both El Cuco and Rosalia accepted responsibility for their acts. The trial was held, and the judge suspended all scheduled witness statements, leaving Martha's parents distressed as they had called Carcanio to testify in hopes he would finally reveal their daughter's whereabouts. On June 9, 2022, both El Cuco and Rosalia were sentenced to 2.5 years in prison, and the judge also imposed a fine of €1,440 each and a civil liability payment of €30,000 to Martha's parents. However, they didn't care about the money. They still wanted just one thing: to find the body of their daughter. That same year, the investigative judge authorized the expert to access the mobile phones of Carcanio and Martha. However, he did not grant permission to do the same with the rest of the individuals involved in the case, as there currently is no evidence against them. Carcanio consented to his phone being examined, insisting they would find evidence pointing to his brother as the actual murderer. Yet the main goal was to determine the location of the long-sought body. Although looking for new leads in the criminal case was prohibited, the expert never submitted his findings, and thus, the case was closed indefinitely. In November 2022, 13 years after Martha's murder, the civil court decided to close the separate investigation for the search of the body, deeming the legally stipulated investigation period as expired without any new significant discoveries. Martha's parents came to terms with the fact that Carcanio would never reveal the location of their daughter's body and decided to sell the flat where the crime occurred. Martha's case will join countless other unresolved cases worldwide, with documents gathering dust on a desk. That's all for today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and leave your comments, always with respect for the family of the victim. This is Unreal True Crime. See you soon. Maria Elizabeth Ridolph was a 7-year-old girl who disappeared from Sycamore, Illinois, on December 3, 1957. Her remains were found almost 5 months later in a wooded area near Woodbine, Illinois, approximately 90 miles from her home. Maria was last seen by her friend on her neighborhood corner of Center Cross Street and Archie Place with an unknown man in his early 20s who called himself Johnny. Every day we coexist with evil. We witness the darkest side of human behavior. The suffering caused by one individual to others is something inherent in our society. As dedicated investigators of the criminal world, we're on a mission to uncover the most shocking crimes and get inside the minds of those who commit them. I am Lucas, and today I bring you another unreal true crime. The case of Maria Ridolph. Maria Ridolph was born on March 12, 1950, to the marriage of Michael and Frances Ivy Ridolph in Sycamore, Illinois. She was the youngest of their 4 children and had 2 sisters and a brother. While many residents lived or worked on farms in the area, Her father, Michael, worked in one of Sycamore's few factories, and her mother, Frances, was a homemaker. At the time of her abduction, Maria was 7 years old, 1.10 meters tall, and weighed 24 kilograms, with dark brown hair and brown eyes. She was an honor student, then in the 2nd grade, and had also received awards for perfect attendance at Sunday school at John's Evangelical Lutheran Church. Maria was also described as sensitive and afraid of the dark. Her best friend was 8-year-old Kathy Sigmund, who lived on the same street as the Ridolfs. On the afternoon of December 3, 1957, Maria begged to be let out to play because it had started to snow. After dinner, Maria and her friend and neighbor Kathy Sigmund went out in the growing darkness as the sun had set, near Maria's house. They played a game they called dodging cars, running back and forth trying to avoid the lights of oncoming cars. According to Kathy, after a while, a man approached them, whom Kathy later described to the police as being around 20 years old and tall, with a thin chin, light hair, separated incisors, and wearing a colorful sweater. The man, who said his name was Johnny, asked the girls if they liked dolls and if they liked piggyback rides. He gave Maria a piggyback ride, after which she returned home and came back with one of her dolls to show him. After Maria went back, Kathy ran home to get her mittens, leaving Maria alone with the man. When Kathy returned, Maria and the man were no longer there. Kathy went to the Ridolfs' house to tell them she couldn't find her friend. Initially, the family thought Maria was hiding and sent Maria's 11-year-old brother to look for her. After he couldn't find her, the Ridolfs called the police, and within an hour, both police and armed civilians began a search in the town, but they couldn't locate Maria or Johnny, the man she was last seen with. The FBI, assuming that Maria might have been kidnapped across state lines, a federal crime, arrived in Sycamore within 2 days to assist local and state police in the search. The FBI and police interviewed numerous witnesses who had seen the 2 girls playing without anyone else present between 6:00 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. Based on these interviews, it was believed that Johnny had approached the girls after 6:30 p.m., and the FBI concluded that Maria was kidnapped between 6:45 and 7:00 p.m. Maria's disappearance received national media coverage, and both President Eisenhower and FBI Director John Edgar Hoover took an interest in the case. The police continued to investigate various suspects in the area, including passersby, known sex offenders, and a local man who had given children piggyback rides. But they didn't develop any solid leads. Maria's parents appeared on television, radio, and in the press, pleading for the safe return of their daughter and seeking the public's help in finding her. On April 26, 1958, near Woodbine, Illinois, approximately 100 miles from Sycamore, 2 tourists looking for mushrooms in a wooded area along U.S. Route 20 discovered the skeletal remains of a child wearing only an undershirt, shirt, and socks beneath a partially fallen tree. The state of decomposition indicated that the body had been there for several months. The body was identified as Maria Ridolf through dental records, a lock of hair, and the clothing she had been wearing when she disappeared. Her coat, corduroy pants, underwear, and shoes were not found. There were no photographs taken at the crime scene, though photographs were taken of the general location without showing the body, because the coroner, James Furlong, did not want pictures of the remains to leak to the newspapers. Due to the crime having occurred within Illinois rather than crossing state lines, the FBI withdrew from the case and left it in the hands of state and local police. The initial autopsy could not determine the cause of death due to the advanced state of decomposition. On December 4th, investigators visited John Tessier's house as part of the search for Maria in the neighborhood. According to Tessier's stepsisters, their mother told the investigators that John Tessier had been home on the night of December 3rd, something they later testified was not true. Shortly thereafter, before Maria's body was found, the FBI investigated Tessier as a possible suspect. Sources differ on whether the investigation was triggered by a comment from a local resident or by John Tessier's parents themselves, trying to divert suspicion from their son when they realized he had the same name and general description as Johnny. Tessier and his parents told FBI investigators that on December 3, 1957, Tessier was in Rockford, Illinois, about 40 miles northwest of Sycamore, to enlist in the Air Force. This story differed from his mother's earlier statement, as reported by her daughters, that Tessier had been at home all night. He said he had been in Chicago on December 2nd and 3rd undergoing the required physical exams for his enlistment. On the morning of December 3rd, he visited the Chicago recruiting office, which was corroborated by records, and then spent the day sightseeing in Chicago before returning to Rockford by train that evening, arriving there at 6:45 p.m. Upon arriving in Rockford, he called his parents to ask them to pick him up and take him home to Sycamore, since he had taken the train to and from Chicago and had left his own car at home. Later, telephone records were found showing that a collect call had been made from the Rockford post office to the Tessier home at 6:57 p.m. that evening by someone who gave their name as John Tessier, as written by the operator. After making the call, Tessier met with officials at the Rockford recruiting office to drop off paperwork related to his enlistment. Officers confirmed that they spoke with Tessier around 7:15 p.m. that evening, although one officer also expressed some concerns about Tessier's credibility and behavior. Tessier was taken to the police station to take a lie detector test, which he passed. Based on his alibi and the lie detector test results, Tessier was removed from the list of suspects, and the FBI closed their report on December 10, 1957. In 1997, with no significant leads, Sycamore Police Lieutenant Patrick Soler closed the Ridolph case, which was 40 years old at the time, and named William Henry Redmond, a former truck driver and carnival worker from Nebraska who had died in 1992, as the likely man who had abducted and murdered the girl. Redmond had been accused in 1988 of the 1951 murder of an 8-year-old Pennsylvania girl, although that case was dismissed when a police officer refused to reveal the name of a confidential informant. Redmond was also a suspect in the 1951 disappearance of 10-year-old Beverly Potts in Ohio. The case was reopened in 2008 based on new information from McCullough's half-sister, Janet Tessier. According to Janet, her mother, Eileen Tessier, on her deathbed in January 1994, had said, "John did it. John did it. Those 2 girls and the one who disappeared. You have to tell someone." Janet interpreted the statement to mean that her half-brother John Tessier, who would soon change his name to Jack McCullough, had kidnapped and killed Maria Ridolph. John, or Jack McCullough, as he was known at that time, allegedly once threatened to kill Janet with a gun and sexually abused his half-sister Jean when she was 14. He was separated from the Tessier family at the time of his mother Eileen's death, and he was told not to attend her funeral. Janet Tessier said that she made several unsuccessful attempts over the next 14 years to get law enforcement, including the Sycamore Police and the FBI, to investigate her mother's statement. State police investigators reviewed the evidence and developed a new timeline in which Tessier could have kidnapped Maria and driven to Rockford in time to make a phone call at 6:57 p.m. and meet with the recruiting officers at 7:15 p.m. Under this new timeline, they determined that Maria would have been kidnapped no later than 6:20 p.m. The police search for Maria had started at 7 p.m. according to Catherine, who said she had returned home from a party at 7 p.m. and found the search had begun. Hoping that Kathy Chapman, formerly Sigmund, would review a series of yearbook photographs, the police took 5 group photos from the Sycamore High School yearbook of 1957. But John Tessier's photo was not in the yearbook because he had been expelled. The police obtained a contemporary photo of him from his ex-girlfriend, which differed from the yearbook photos in that Tessier was wearing a shirt instead of a suit, and the background was dark instead of light. Chapman identified Tessier's photo. Along with the picture, Tessier's former girlfriend at the time of the crime provided an unused military train ticket from Rockford to Chicago dated December 1957. Investigators took this to suggest that, contrary to Tessier's alibi, He did not take the train on his trip to Chicago and instead drove there, which means he could have returned to Sycamore on the afternoon of December 3, kidnapped Maria, and driven to Rockford. In July 2011, the Seattle Police Department, which had joined the Illinois State Police in the investigation, brought McCullough in for questioning. At first, McCullough spoke calmly and cooperated, but when asked about the murder of Maria Ridulph and his whereabouts on the night of the crime, he became evasive and aggressive. After McCullough refused to answer more questions, he was arrested for the kidnapping and murder of Maria Ridulph and extradited to Illinois. Maria's body was exhumed that same month to look for evidence of possible intruder DNA, but none could be found. However, a forensic anthropologist discovered that Maria had been stabbed in the throat at least 3 times with a sharp object. The news of the arrest in a 54-year-old murder case garnered national attention. In the September 2012 trial, the prosecution argued that McCullough was attracted to Maria and decided to kidnap her, but ended up taking her life. They presented new autopsy reports suggesting that Maria had been fatally wounded. 3 inmates who had been incarcerated with McCullough testified that he had talked about killing Maria. However, their stories were inconsistent. One inmate said McCullough talked about strangling Maria with a wire, while another claimed McCullough accidentally suffocated her while trying to prevent her from screaming. The defense argued that the prosecutors and police were pressured by the Ridulph and Tessier families to solve the case and implicate McCullough, even though there was no physical evidence, motive, or indication that McCullough was in the area when Maria was kidnapped. McCullough did not take the stand in his own defense, following his lawyer's advice. On September 14, 2012, McCullough was found guilty of the kidnapping and murder of Maria Ridulph and was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 20 years. He was 73 years old at the time of the sentencing. In 2015, McCullough, acting pro se, representing himself, filed a post-conviction petition seeking to overturn his murder conviction. After the court initially dismissed McCullough's petition as frivolous and without merit, the public defender who had originally represented McCullough at trial and had continued to investigate the case while staying in contact with McCullough, despite no longer being appointed to represent him, asked the court to reconsider the dismissal. In response to the motions, the county's state prosecutor, Richard Schmeck, who had replaced Clay Campbell in that position, conducted a thorough review of the evidence. This led Schmeck to conclude that McCullough could not have committed the crime and was, in fact, innocent. According to Schmeck, there was no evidence presented at the trial that clearly established McCullough's whereabouts on the night of Maria Ridulph's abduction and supported his alibi. In particular, Illinois Bell telephone records showed that McCullough had made a collect call to his mother that night from a payphone in downtown Rockford, rather than from Sycamore, as alleged in his trial. Given the timing of the phone call, the approximately 40-mile distance between Sycamore and Rockford, and the icy road conditions, Schmeck concluded that McCullough could not have been in Sycamore at the time of Maria Ridulph's disappearance. On April 15, 2016, an Illinois Circuit Court judge overturned McCullough's original conviction and sentence and ordered a new trial. McCullough, who still faced charges, was released on bail that day pending the new trial. McCullough was declared innocent of the crime by the DeKalb County Circuit Court on April 12, 2017. And with that, dear listener, we conclude today's case. I look forward to joining you again as we delve into the intricate details of some of history's most dreadful crimes. Until next time on Unreal True Crime, farewell.